In this video, we're going to take a look at some of the more recent Fallout 76 news. A few things are actually pretty big news and pretty important to cover. I'm going to keep the intro on this one pretty short, but one thing we did just learn is that Bethesda is not posting an Inside the Vault article this week. Alright, not super exciting, typically disappointing, but the justification is they're working on the final touches for the Fallout 76 roadmap. And in fact, the Fallout 76 roadmap will be releasing 1 week from when this video goes live, so next Thursday. I'm not typically a fan of these announcements for announcements, but I'm definitely excited. As far as what exactly you can expect from this roadmap, it's actually quite a bit. Some of the obvious things, the things we know on the way, but getting some dates associated with them. The current roadmap, which is more the community roadmap, ends with May. But following that, Bethesda has also described how this summer we're supposed to get things like a Wendigo Colossus event, a new team system, where in a server you could specify wanting to be in a specific team and actually do activities together to get larger rewards, as well as major overhauls coming to perk cards, perk respecs, perk loadouts, as well as the legendary perk system. And there's also been mention of things like pets and wanting to expand the landmass, going beyond Appalachia itself. So in the more near future, it definitely seems like we're getting more in the way of feature additions, and specifically more social feature additions. Ways to experience and enjoy this game with others. But there is that big lingering question that I feel like the answer may be kind of scary of when is the next big story DLC? We heard numerous times with the lead up and now release of Wastelanders that it is a framework for the future. They're using the systems created for the Wastelanders DLC to implement future DLCs, and specifically story DLCs. So hopefully this roadmap will associate some dates for that. In the past, it was described how the roadmap they had in the works was for the rest of the year, and although that now is a couple of months old, you have to imagine that this will be very similar to the roadmap we got early last year, which did lay out the full 3 DLC cycle. Although one thing that has kind of concerned me as you start to look at the clock and wonder, does Bethesda actually have enough time to get another big DLC out this year? Bethesda has kind of developed this reputation of being fairly slow to update some aspects of Fallout 76, and there's really only 6 more months between now and the end of the year, or at least as far as development time goes if they want to have the content out this year. Wastelanders took roughly a year, so I wonder if another big DLC isn't actually coming in 2020, but maybe pushed to 21, and we'll have more intermittent, smaller story experiences throughout the rest of this year. Now, of course, that's just speculating. We don't know exactly what we're going to get. I just wanted to throw it out there, because if something like that isn't on the roadmap, I could see it being a major disappointment. Although one of the other things that is worth noting around this, we haven't heard from Bethesda Game Studios Dallas in like a really long time. If you're not familiar, Bethesda Game Studios Dallas seem to have mostly made the Battle Royale mode for Fallout 76, and seems to have worked mostly on some of those subsequent updates. Now, it's not totally clear if Bethesda Game Studios Dallas is still working or helping with 76 or not. We didn't see them at PAX East. We really haven't heard much about them since September when we got some of the final or most recent Battle Royale updates. Now, on one hand, this might just be because they've been put on Starfield or some other project that isn't publicly known, like a VR port of sorts, or alternatively, maybe it's because there is another big multiplayer mode coming in summer of 2020, similar to how Battle Royale was summer of 2019. I don't really know, but that might be one of the big reveals to make an appearance on this roadmap. Although outside of that, when it comes to Fallout 76 as of late, one of the big topics being shared is around the stash steal glitch, where basically users are able to actually get items from your stash unintentionally. It seems like this is sometimes happening with punch bowls. We just got some gameplay of that. Other times with vending machines, and that seems to be a bit more widespread, where a variety of items may be sold for very low prices, even though you never listed them or definitely don't want to sell them for that cheap. But thus far, the community and Bethesda have been pretty unable to actually figure out what's going on here, what causes this, or at least that was until yesterday, where this post popped up on Reddit where somebody seemingly found out how to do this. And I will have a link to the post and the video down below. Actually, huge props to this user as he reached out to some people to communicate this to Bethesda initially before even making the post. But more or less in the post and in the video that he did attach later on, because people didn't fully believe him, he describes how the way this glitch happens is, first, you list an item you want to sell in a vending machine, such as the anti-armor sickle. Then you list an item both above and below that. So we list a 44 round, which appears above that in the menu, and then some fusion cells, which appear below it. From there, what you do is connect to a different world where your camp cannot be placed down. Then typically this will give you the option to either go to a different world where you can place your camp or just stay on this one, but your camp will be temporarily disabled while you're on the world. From there, you run over to your stash, take out that weapon you were selling, so in his case, the anti-armor sickle. Then he kind of runs around for a sec, puts it back in his stash, and then from there, you go back to a world where your camp can be placed and your vendors will be re-enabled. And you will find, one, that you have a ton of items for sale if you actually hover over your camp, but even further, this user has the price of that sickle reduced from 26,000 caps to now just 3 caps. So then if some other random user stumbled upon this, they would have a really good deal. And you might be saying, well, that doesn't explain it. When he opens his vendor, he only has 3 for sale. But the thinking is that it's actually listing a bunch of items for sale, he just can't see them, but other people can buy them. So this at first seemed like definitive proof. He figured out how exactly this is happening. But there are some problems here. I think a lot of people that are supporting this or spreading this haven't actually tried to recreate it, because I've only found a few people even attempt, and out of everyone I know, nobody has been successful in getting this result, including me. I tried 5 times with different characteristics or variables to recreate this process, and I could not do it. I tried it on public worlds when I took the item out of the stash. Sometimes I tried using a regular stash that was somebody else's. Other times I tried using a survival tent like he does in the video. But every single time when I went back to my vendor at the end, that weapon wasn't listed, it was just gone. And if you hover over my vendor, I didn't have a ton of items for sale that I couldn't see. In this video, he connects to a private world, so I tried doing it that way also, but I had the exact same results. And I also thought perhaps I just wasn't able to see the items for sale, but other people could, but I had someone come to my camp at every attempt, and each time they just saw the same things I did. And even further, going back to that video, he mentions how when he hovers over his camp, it shows a ton of items for sale. And he just assumes he can't see them, but they actually are for sale. But it doesn't seem like this was ever confirmed with somebody actually trying to buy something, or at least I couldn't find that evidence. In Fallout 76 myself, I've encountered a similar glitch where my camp will show a ton of stuff for sale, even though none of it is. But simply fast traveling or server hopping would reset that, and then it would show the appropriate items for sale when you hovered over. And if you actually looked at the camp, those items weren't for sale in reality. But I'm not saying we should discount this video overall. The sickle is now ridiculously cheap, as well as even though he started off selling fusion cells, now shotgun shells are the ones for sale at 1 cap less. In my testing, I noticed that sometimes when connecting to a world where your camp couldn't be placed, then back to a world where your camp could be placed, items in my display cases got removed, which is another attribute of this glitch. People find odd things in their display cases, things that shouldn't be able to be placed there. But even further, if we scroll back to some of the other video footage we have of this, we know that in this instance, the person here, Miss Musey, whose camp is glitching out, can see in her own vending machine a bunch of items for sale. She verbally says it. For some reason, the quantities were wrong, like she could only see 1 wine for sale, but somebody else could see 1,000, but that might just be an unrelated visual glitch. So the overall takeaway of this one, what I would say is, I think there's more to the story than what we have in this video. Perhaps it really is connected to not having your camp placed on a world, and then messing around with things in your stash, but I would definitely not put this case as solved, especially considering I haven't been able to recreate it, meaning there's likely additional factors at play, something else this guy who made this video has going on. Another post popped up over the past 24 hours where somebody having a wrong item placed at their vending machine, and they also had this occur when they were on a world that they couldn't place their camp down. So in the short term, to avoid this, probably a good idea to not connect to worlds where you can't place your camp down, just go to a different one. But there certainly is more to uncover what exactly is happening here. One of the other recent things to happen of note is the PTS for Fallout 76 reopened. With that, users gained access to some future content. We know that Fosnot Parade is being featured on this, as well as the Treasure Hunter event, but of course, also there are data mines you could take from this newer build of the game. So other content that isn't currently live can be extracted from those files, and then you can get a good idea as to where this game's heading in the future, and people have been getting a good idea, as several people have actually been leaking a lot of this information. I've had several people send me them, I've seen them posted online, just generally discussed on Discords. I know though, of course, some of this future stuff isn't as large as a Wastelanders DLC, but Bethesda is still adamant about taking this down, and very regularly people are getting copyright strikes or DMCA takedowns around this. I think some people are reposting some of this content, not realizing it actually is a leak. One in particular is the Atomic Shop data mine. You've probably seen this, where people data mine what's next on the Atomic Shop. Well, somebody did that for the PTS, but then it's now being shared with people that aren't in the PTS. So overall, if you're wondering why either A, I'm not covering them, it's because if I covered them, this video would be copyright striked, so no. But even further, if you're thinking about posting that, just know that you could either get kicked out of the PTS, or wherever you post it, Bethesda will likely take it down. They've been pretty consistent with doing so. Although one thing that was leaked from the PTS that now has been stated publicly is the reversion or changes coming to the Free Radicals mask. In Fallout 76 right now, if you choose at the start of the game during the Wayward questline to side with the Free Radicals, later on you could actually pass a skill check or give them something to get a legendary mask from this faction. I thought this was really cool, just the turn of events in general, but also how you get a very powerful reward. This is the only legendary piece of headwear in Fallout 76, but apparently, according to Bethesda, this was unintentional and is being changed. They describe how unfortunately, we never intended for this mask to be a legendary item, and we are planning to remove its legendary attribute with the release of Update 19 later this month. The justification being that it is the best in-slot choice for headgear because it's literally the only legendary piece of headgear, and it creates an unfair advantage based off making that choice compared to other players who didn't make the choice to side with the Free Radicals. This change is going to apply to all future drops of the mask, but also all of the existing ones. So if you have the mask right now, it will no longer be legendary after the next update. So this is kind of crazy because if you actually look at how much some of these masks have been selling for, it's a lot. So people are going to be mad in that regard. As far as how I feel about this, I kind of get it, but I also kind of don't. Like, does anyone actually care? Like, is it really that big of an issue in Fallout 76 that there's only one legendary mask? And also the fact that it's only becoming public knowledge that it's getting reverted 3 weeks after it went live? Like, if it truly was a mistake, why not just tell people like immediately so you don't have huge sums of caps being exchanged for an item that will be removed, or at least the valuable part will be removed? Overall, the handling on this one definitely could have been done better, but even further, for me at least, I kind of get why they're doing it. All their justifications make sense, but at the same time, is it really that big of a deal to have one mask that happens to be better than the rest in a PvE game? I think if you actually break it down, there's going to be more people unhappy that the legendary effects are getting removed from the mask than people who are unhappy that there's only one legendary mask. I honestly feel like a better solution would have just been to add some of the other masks or headwear in the game to legendary lists. We know the Marine helmet's coming soon, you have the Scout mask, there was a better way to handle this. But at the end of the day, it's going to be one of those things people get mad about in the short term and then get over in the long term. One of the other things I just wanted to mention more so in passing is something interesting I've noticed, which is almost a cultural shift that you've seen when it comes to exploits, or really abusing exploits when it comes to Fallout 76, and that's almost that more people now seem to be welcoming or accepting of that because of the new features. In the past, exploiting was really condemned, especially when it came to things like the carry weight exploit, or of course, duping exploits. But an interesting shift that has occurred when it comes to Wastelanders is that I think people are getting so tired or just don't want to deal with the grind, that being specifically the reputation as well as gold bullion grind, that you see more openly admitting, yeah, I abused the faction reputation exploits to get max faction rep because I just didn't want to deal with it anymore. Or even others mentioning how they're waiting for a bullion exploit so they could abuse that to actually get more gold bullions. Obviously this is a little bit different because it doesn't really affect any other players, it's just between you and I guess Bethesda. I don't really have much to say about that. I obviously understand not wanting to deal with it. It just is interesting how there is this somewhat of a shift in the exploit community, as now it's almost growing a little bit larger. But we have different categories of acceptance when it comes to those exploits, which is something interesting because even in the past, there were some people who were avid dupers who wouldn't touch things like the inventory steal hack, or hacks in general that harm other players' experience. One final thing I did want to mention though, Bethesda recently reopened their Discord server, this seeming to coincide with some of the recent live streams they've been doing Bethesda at home. I mentioned this in my previous video, but yeah, if you want to talk about some of the Bethesda games, I will have that linked down below. Does this have a deeper meaning? I don't think so, although lately people are taking meaning out of everything. Like when it comes to Starfield, some of the speculation's getting a little crazy for me, like that a big announcement could be coming because they hadn't tweeted in a while, which is something that sometimes happens before big announcements from Bethesda. There still may be an announcement from them. I think we'll probably hear about Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo. But with all that being said, I thank you all for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. And until next time, I hope to see you all later.